Welcome back to the Communication Mastery Podcast with me, Mark Burlinson. I'm glad you're here again. This is where we unleash the power of understanding so that we can build bridges and not boxes, because we understand that communication is the soil in which teamwork grows, and that makes us all more fruitful, whether it's in business or non-profits or in the community. So we're going to have a great time together again this week. Last week we talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, and so I thought what I'd do this week is to outline ways that communication IQ, the life languages and communication coaching, how that works together with emotional intelligence, or EQ as it's called in the business world. So understanding and applying communication IQ can increase and deepen your EQ. You following all the terminology? Emotional intelligence involves recognizing and understanding and managing your own emotions, as well as your impact on the emotions of others. It's a skill that we can all grow, whether you think you're good at it or not. All of us can grow our emotional intelligence in different ways. Some of the skills that are included in emotional intelligence would be empathy, emotional regulation, understanding what's going on inside of me and knowing how to regulate it so that it comes out in helpful ways and not unhelpful ways. But also social awareness, the ability to read the room, the ability to see when other people need an adaptation for us to be able to connect, as well as relationship management, knowing how to approach individual relationships in a way that will move us forward toward strengthening connection and toward our common goals. So that's EQ, and the communication IQ component can really increase your understanding of your preferred communication styles. And so that equips you to adapt to others more intentionally. Imagine if you were suddenly dropped into, say, the middle of Europe, but you didn't have any knowledge of French or German or Italian or whatever. You would struggle to get along, wouldn't you? You wouldn't know where you were, you wouldn't know how to communicate, because you don't have the languages that are needed for the setting you've been dropped into. However, if you went into this middle of Europe with at least a rudimentary understanding of some of those languages, then you would be able to flourish more easily, because you'd be able to make a connection with the people around you. And it's the same with communication IQ. If you feel out of your depth with emotional intelligence and being able to adapt and relate to other people, communication IQ can be that rudimentary understanding that really helps you to make a start. Your EQ will thank you for the investment you make in your communication IQ. So combining communication IQ with emotional intelligence in this way has several advantages, and I wanted to list them out for you. I've got them on my notes here. How many have I got? I've got 6 altogether. 6 advantages of putting these two things together. And the first one is enhanced interactions. You know, when you have an interaction with somebody, you come away from it with a sense of whether that was hugely beneficial or slightly beneficial or kind of awkward and I wish it had been better. And communication IQ helps us to articulate thoughts clearly, to articulate our own understandings with an awareness of the needs of others and the filters through which they can hear or not hear what it is I'm trying to communicate. And so once I begin to understand those different dynamics, that brings a clarity that otherwise wouldn't be there. But EQ ensures that those thoughts are conveyed with an understanding of emotional nuances. And so that combination of knowing how to adapt to different people, as well as being more aware of emotions and impact, put the two together and you get a much greater return on your communication investment. And there's more consequential interaction when you put the two things together. The second thing that combining communication understanding with emotional intelligence is in the whole area of conflict resolution. You can't go through life without having conflicts. Hopefully you don't have them every moment of every day, but we all have conflicts, don't we? At least weekly, if not daily. And we've seen before on the podcast how the Life Languages Communication IQ system can really help us to depersonalize conflicts, because we can identify which communication style is in distress or which communication style is unhelpful in this setting or is adding to the conflict. And emotional intelligence allows us to understand the emotional undercurrents that are at play. That social awareness that EQ can help us to grow will build a greater degree of empathy and compassion for others. And so together, we'll be able to resolve disputes more thoughtfully, but also more compassionately. So there's thinking and feeling involved in reaching the goal of resolving some conflict or dispute rather than inflaming it. The third area where communication styles and emotional intelligence can really work together well is in building trust. We saw last week how clear communication can really foster transparency in a team, especially in a business. And communication IQ is the best tool that I know for making communication clear and unifying because of the built-in adaptability component. Then emotional intelligence helps us to respond to team members' own emotional needs in an appropriate way. So rather than disregarding or rejecting them, we can receive what their emotional responses are and build that into developing communication, building trust as we move forward together. So together, those two create a synergy that builds rapport within a team and also builds trust, particularly between the members of the team and the team leader, but also between the team members and each other, because that can sometimes be the biggest challenge. If you've got two team members who are wired very differently in their preferred communication styles, you as a leader need to help them to see those differences become strengths rather than obstacles to communication. A fourth area where these two different modalities can really collaborate and make a difference is in the whole area of feedback and growth. When a leader has a high communication IQ, they can deliver constructive feedback effectively. I remember one time that somebody spoke to me, understanding that my primary filter is on the level of, are we connecting? Are we communicating? And so they took the time to make sure that we were connecting before they delivered the feedback that they had to offer. That was very beneficial to me because my heart and my mind had been prepared to receive what was coming by the preparation the person had done ahead of time. I would contrast that with another setting where this is further in the past, and again, I'm grateful for it because I learned from it, but I wasn't grateful for it at the time, where a leader without that level of understanding of communication IQ communicated feedback to me out of their preferred communication style, which was very direct and very confrontational, which is very helpful in some settings, but is one of my lower styles. And because they came over in just their own style without understanding where I was coming from, it was very hard for me to receive that. I actually had to go to therapy for a while to begin to process what was going on inside of me as a result of that feedback. So that's a very important part. Feedback is vital to growth, but understanding how to give feedback can only come by adding communication IQ into the mix. And when you've got a high EQ, emotional intelligence, you can also frame the feedback empathetically with an understanding of the emotional needs of the person that you're giving the feedback to. That makes it more palatable, but also more actionable for the recipient. So just as I found that feedback, which had the preparation of being in my communication style, was much easier for me to receive. The same with your team. If you take the time to adapt to their needs, then the feedback will be received and it'll be much less frustrating for you as a leader. There's a fifth area where emotional intelligence and communication IQ both overlap and collaborate, and that's in the whole area of influence and persuasion. As leaders, we're in the influence business, aren't we? Most of us need to persuade somebody to do something somewhere along the way, whether it's a parent with a child or whether it's a colleague at work. And communication IQ can enable leaders, or any individual come to that, to present a compelling argument or an attractive proposition in a way that can be received. Because sometimes the offering is so deep and so well thought out that the person who's receiving the offer can't really grasp it if they're not wired with that kind of deep thinking. Or in other times, the suggestion and the offer is so much on the practical level that somebody who's wired more emotionally doesn't connect with it at anything other than a surface level, because, well, yeah, that's emptying the trash, that's checking things off the list, that's fine. But what about what I feel? And they can't receive it that way. So influence and persuasion can really grow as we combine communication IQ with emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence enables me to gauge the reaction from my audience, whether it's an audience of one that I'm trying to persuade to do something or to take on a challenge, or whether it's an audience of the whole team that I'm leading toward a goal or to overcome an obstacle. And so I can adjust the message accordingly because my emotional intelligence is at a level where I can gauge the reactions accurately and take that into account in the way that I continue to maybe self-edit my communication to meet them there. It enhances my persuasive efforts. I'm sure most of us have experienced a good salesman at some point who's really convinced us to buy something by having both good communication skills and high emotional intelligence. And then finally, an area where life languages and communication IQ works very well together with emotional intelligence, or EQ, is in the area of team collaboration. My whole heart for small business and non-profits is that they're teams that so often have to work much harder than those in bigger settings, bigger corporate settings, to be able to build teamwork. My heart is that there would be effective communication in every team, whether it's a team of just 2 or 3, or whether it's a team of 20 or 30. There would be a shared understanding of goals, and emotional intelligence would create space for team members to express their contribution, to express their emotions, to express their ideas freely, but also to understand how to adapt their communication style so that what they're offering isn't lost, doesn't fall to the floor because it hasn't been captured, but they can express it in a way that the others in the room can receive it and hear it. So together, that leads to greater collaboration because we understand each other more deeply. It also leads to greater innovation because there's room for every idea to be brought to the table. Too often in teams, there are many ideas left on the floor because they haven't been brought to the table or they haven't been received by those that were needing to receive them. And that grieves my heart. That's why I do what I do. So integrating communication IQ with emotional intelligence is another crucial skill for any of us who desire to be effective leaders, whether of ourselves or of our teams. We can connect more deeply with our teams. We can foster a positive culture. We can drive success. So as we grasp the power of the synergies of those two modalities today, I would encourage you to jot down some ideas of where can I grow? Do I need to grow my EQ? Do I need to get better at social interaction? Do I need to get better at reading the room? Do I need to get better at understanding my own internal wiring? Or is it in the area of communication? How well do I adapt to others who are different from me? Do I have the skills and the understanding that I need to be able to build a bridge to a person who's different from me? All of these things built together will make you a more effective leader. And that's my goal for you. That's why I do what I do. I want every one of us to grow our communication mastery. And I trust that these 6 thoughts on the merging of communication IQ with emotional intelligence have been valuable to you. You can always ask me questions. There may be questions that have arisen from today's episode. Just go to my website at markburlinson.com, click on the contact link and send me a message. I'd be glad to answer any of those questions in a future episode. And so for now, who in your life and in your circle would benefit from the things we've just talked about? The blending together of emotions and communication skills, the understanding of other people at a deeper and a more fruitful level. Think of somebody right now. You could text them a link to this episode and just say, hey, I just listened to this. I think you'd find it interesting. I think you'd find it helpful. Take a listen and let me know what you think. Take some right now. And next week, we'll be back with another episode of the Communication Mastery Podcast, where you and your friend can benefit from what we'll be looking at next. We'll see you again soon.